What's up, family, and welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to talk about something a little different. I want to talk about the myth of the soul and how it's really been used to rewire our identity. I want you to forget everything you think you know about your eternal soul. We're about to deconstruct how this fundamental Christian idea isn't a gift, but a meticulously crafted mechanism. Prepare to see how the concept of the soul has historically been used to exert profound influence and control over millions. So let's start here. The first thing that I would like to unpack is the allure of the eternal. This is unpacking the soul. The thing that is most attractive about this is the hook, right? There is this deep yearning for something more beyond the physical. This is how the concept of the soul is designed to uniquely address this deep human yearning for something more beyond the physical. I know even as I begin to deconstruct, I begin to wonder what that even meant anymore. Like I was so clear, I was so sure before, like there is something beyond the physical, there is something beyond the material, there is something more. And I was so sure, but after a while, I was like, wait a minute, how do you attach certainty to something you can't even define? And that's what I realized. I couldn't even define what beyond the physical actually even meant, right? So let's get a little brief historical context. Let's talk about where this idea of a distinct immortal essence originates, even pre-Christianity, right? So the notion of an enduring essence predates Christianity by millennia. Ancient Egyptians spoke of the Ka and the Ba. These are aspects of personhood that survived death and required ritual maintenance. Now, in Homeric Greece, the psyche was the breath that left the body at death. It's not an immortal self, just life's animating vapor. It was Plato who reframed it into an immortal, immaterial entity tied to truth and reason. Now, later, Hellenistic and Roman philosophers like the Stoics and Neoplatonists cemented the idea that the body was corruptible matter, but the soul divine and pure. And of course, Judaism then absorbed pieces of this through exposure to Greek thought during the Hellenistic period, creating a bridge into early Christianity. All right, so you see that we start with the Egyptian Ka and Ba, which does have this sense of personhood that survives death and requires this type of ritual maintenance. But then by the time we get into Greece, we have this thing called psyche, which is more so the breath, almost like the life force that leaves the body. It's not an immortal self. Instead, it's an animating vapor. Now, the initial Christian integration of this, which answers the question, how does early Christian theology adopt and adapt existing philosophical ideas of a soul, which of course is a word that doesn't exist yet? Christianity synthesized Hebrew ideas of nephesh. All right, nephesh is life, breath, or being, not inherently or descriptively immortal. In that, but they begin to synthesize the ideas of nephesh with the ideas of Greek dualism. So Paul's letters actually show the tension between Hebrew wholeness, where body, soul, and spirit are one or a part of an integrated life, an integrated existence. Paul introduces this Greek separation, the flesh versus spirit, which if you've ever read through the New Testament, you can feel that tension. You're asking the questions to yourself, which one is it? Am I body, soul, and spirit? Am I one thing, or is my body the bad thing, the flesh, and my spirit the good thing? Now, by the second century, it was church fathers such as Tertullian and Augustine who began to lean fully into Platonic dualism, positioning the soul as the real self that must be purified for eternal life. Now, this philosophical merger created a powerful lever for moral control, one where one's invisible core was now subject to divine evaluation. And this is ultimately what is central and what is critical to the idea of the soul in its controlling aspect. Okay, so let's talk about that. It's almost impossible to separate a conversation about the soul from a conversation of a promise of eternal reward or eternal punishment. The soul's destiny seems to be directly tied to obedience and adherence of religious or cultural doctrine. All right. Why? Because once immortality is assumed, the stakes become infinite. So threats of eternal torment or promises of eternal bliss outstrip any earthly incentive because it is forever. It's like that scene in Half Baked where John Stewart is like, "Have you ever did this, but on weed? And have you ever did this?" It's like that. It's like that because it's like, now, have you ever been happy, but forever? Or have you ever been sad, but forever? That's what the eternity thing becomes. It becomes this eternal question of extended, over exaggerated, hyperbolic, either punishment or reward, which to me at that moment, we've already moved beyond the boundaries of reason or utility. You know, that's just me though. That's just me. Okay. So institutions that claim authority over the soul then effectively monopolize meaning. They can effectively monopolize fear and even hope, the full spectrum of human motivation. This converts belief into social compliance. So it's no longer, and again, that's the tricky part about the soul, because once there is a belief that is attached to an eternal existence that you have, that you personally have no way of interrogating, then you have to lean on others. You have to become dependent on someone else to make sure that your soul is in good hands, okay? So that you can get in, so that you're not tormented forever, or so that you can have your favorite food or whatever bliss feeling you need forever, okay? So ultimately, it becomes a tool of social compliance and control. There's also the psychological impact of believing that your immortal essence can be eternally condemned or blessed based on earthly actions. Now, there's a lot of problems with that. One of the biggest ones that I like to highlight about a lot of issues is just that it's leapfrogging, right? Um, Again, I don't know about any heavenly eternal consequences. I don't have the ability to interrogate those, like in any shape, form, or fashion. Now, when that happens, if that ever becomes the case, sure, I'll be there to interrogate. But until I have the ability to actually interrogate that, why would I pretend to be interrogated? You see what I'm saying? No, I call it leapfrogging because I'm leapfrogging to say, "Ooh, I want to make sure that what I do gets me into heaven, or that what I do keeps me out of hell." And you're leapfrogging to some shit that you don't know anything about, that you're not able to interrogate, that you're not able to descriptively define in any type of way that is meaningful or useful. You're going to leap all the way over there and not just be like, "Hey, I only want to do things that are going to do good for other people, and I want to make sure that I'm doing things that are not harmful for other people." Why do I have to leap to eternity when I can just care about how it impacts people right here and now? It causes this severe leapfrogging where you will watch people mistreat their children in service of their afterlife. You will watch people mistreat their friends in service of their afterlife. You will watch people mistreat strangers in service of their perceived afterlife. You know, believing that every thought or desire might imperil one's eternal state produces chronic self surveillance. The believer internalizes the role of warden, policing their own mind. Now, this mirrors the dynamics described in Discipline and Punish. Power functions best when it's internalized. The doctrine of the soul turns conscience into an instrument of control. Damn, this is good. The doctrine of the soul turns conscience into an instrument of control. And so, because typically when we're talking about our soul, we're definitely talking about the seat of our consciousness, if you will. So now then, our consciousness, instead of being available for open exploration, it now exists with self-imposed guardrails where we're always measuring everything by this is either bad or good. It's a very harmful place to be in. And just another thing there, it removes the moment punishment getting introduced into something, I already know we're dealing with the wrong territory. And this is something as a father of four that I can speak to. We don't have punishment, we have discipline in our house. And discipline isn't about, I hope this helps somebody. Discipline is about the behavior you put in place to achieve your goals. It's about goal alignment. That's what discipline is about. Discipline is about bringing your behavior in alignment with your goals. You see, no punishment necessary. See how that works? If your behavior is in alignment with your goals, you're just not going to reach your goals. You know, that's how I talk to my children. All right, let's go back to this. The religious authorities become gatekeepers to the soul's salvation, which solidifies their influence. Again, if this soul is going to go to a place that you cannot interrogate, if this soul itself is something that you cannot interrogate, then everything about the soul is going to be defined by external factors and external voices. You are always going, I mean, this is like the snake oil salesman stuff, you know? Okay, so priests, pastors, and church institutions become custodians of the afterlife. Through confession, repentance, or sacraments, access to forgiveness runs through them. This dependency ensures authority is maintained not by force, but by existential necessity, the fear of losing one's very being. You're afraid to lose something that you don't even know if you have. This is like the emperor's new clothes all over again. This gives us a little background of how we get to this place of where we're using this language, or at least how it comes through Christianity and how it's used in Christianity. And when I said how it comes through Christianity, I'm not saying that this idea of a soul only comes from Christianity. Clearly, we identified that we can see it as early as ancient Egypt, but seeing how it arises in Christianity, because this soul idea of something that is eternal is not necessarily present in scripture the way that we think it is. So let's talk through the biblical ambiguity, even while answering the question, what even is a soul? And most times when you're having a conversation where somebody says, like, no, I believe everybody has a soul, 9 times out of 10, you can end that conversation by asking, like, can you define what that is and show me how you know we have it? You know what I'm saying? All right, so let's walk through it. So we're going to start with the biblical ambiguity. I want to explore the lack of a clear, singular definition of soul. It doesn't exist in scripture. Across the different texts, we see words like nephesh and we see words like psych. So again, nephesh in Hebrew text simply means living being. It applies to humans, animals, even plants. It's never depicted as separable or immortal, not in scripture. In the Greek New Testament, psych sometimes means life. Sometimes it means self. Occasionally, it means something like inner consciousness. The lack of consistency undercuts later doctrinal claims of a distinct eternal soul. Now, I can tell you which group of Christians is familiar with this battle the most: the Pentecostals and the Charismatics, because we leaned heavily into this idea of the Spirit of God. And then not only does God have a spirit, but you have a spirit too. And then you get yourself in real trouble, because then you're like, okay, so I got a spirit and I got a soul. And it's like, no, not only that, you got a spirit, you got a soul, and you got a mind. I heard someone say, it may have been Neil deGrasse Tyson. I heard someone say, something is settled or is understood when there's nobody else writing books about it. Like when people have stopped writing books about something, that means it's understood. When people are still writing books about it, that means that nobody understands it yet. So there's room for anybody to say whatever the hell they want, because nobody understands it yet. And you often see that. You see that if that was a principle, you see it clearly in religion. If God is an all knowing, all powerful, all loving being, what is the need for any other character in his kingdom? A kingdom, the existence of a kingdom is for someone who is not all powerful. It is for someone who is not all knowing. You don't need an army when you are all powerful. You get it? You don't need messengers when you are all knowing. You don't need worshipers when you are all loving. All of this is you started with something you did not know that you could not prove, and you just added more stuff to it that you could not prove. So it starts with a God, and then there's some archangels, and then there's an arch enemy, and then there's some other types of angels, and then there's all different classes of angels, and then there's things between angels and men, and then there's a spirit, and then there's a son, and then we're all sons. Oh, and then there's Christ consciousness. It's all bullshit. It started as bullshit and it never became anything other than bullshit. Just because you add more, like literally adding more bullshit to it just makes it more bullshit. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go down that rabbit trail, but this is true. This is the way. It is known. And all those other television slogans. Okay, let's go. Okay, so this word gets used. I don't know why Alexa did that, but this word gets used a lot, or the idea, the word psych gets used a lot in the New Testament to mean different things. And so no one can say with any type of clarity that that is a word that means soul. Now we need to highlight the inherent logical inconsistencies when attempting to define a non-material entity within a material world. This is where it fails the utility test. Just the idea of it fails the utility test. I use this same test for God. If the soul is non-material but interacts with matter, it violates basic causal logic. How can something immaterial push neurons or muscles, which we see happening? Descartes wrestled with this centuries and later couldn't solve it without invoking miracles. The concept survives largely because it serves emotional, not logical needs. Okay. This is why, like, I am uninterested in conversations about the supernatural because I know too much about the imagination. There's no one who's ever presented to me a supernatural story that I couldn't have said, yeah, that just sounds like a dream, you know? Because again, that's the whole point. If it is supernatural, if it is non-material, we have to define what that means and how you know. How, if you had the experience, you are interacting with it and you are material, you know, which then makes me wonder, how do you then make the assumption? You remember that leapfrogging we talked about? How do you make an assumption that an experience you are having is more than what it is without having evidence that it's more than what it is? Not even having evidence, you don't even have a definition of what more is. It's back to the bullshit on bullshit. I don't know what it is, so I'm just going to make something up and throw it there that makes me feel good. But the problem is there's this causal logic issue. So anytime when people say to me, like, oh, I have this supernatural experience, I'm like, you have to define that to me. I know a little bit about how the mind works. I know a little bit about how biology works. But no, so the concept survives largely because it serves emotional, not logical needs. I don't even like man, almost anytime someone uses the word natural with some other prefix to it, I'm almost positive I'm about to be scammed. You know, like someone comes up to me and says, "Hey, this is all natural." Listen, y'all, I'm going to go ahead and tell y'all the secret and let it out. Like, there is nothing in this world that isn't natural. What are you talking about, man? You're being deceived. You're being deceived. People are playing games with you because you're not actually getting an understanding. And all of your getting, get an understanding. What I like to call out many times is the disingenuousness of people who make bold claims about spirituality. And I'm not anti spirituality, but I am anti bullshit, right? So I don't like when people make bold claims as if they've even tried to know. And so if you're having a conversation, they're like, oh, I know that only the spirit could have done this, or this could only be the soul. And it's like, so you really never read anything that suggests it could possibly be anything else? And it's like, no, because I've read everything and everything lines up with this. And then you can just immediately pull out a neuroscience article and say, well, what about this that just says the opposite of everything you just said? And there's testing and everything for it. You didn't find that? I Googled it on 5 different browsers and it was the first one that came up on all of them. You know what I'm saying? You ever just want to do that to somebody? But that is something that I do challenge people to do before you even have a conversation with someone. Make sure you're having a conversation with someone who has qualified themselves to have the conversation, unless you just have that much time to waste. Okay. All right, let's keep going. I got to get through this. Y'all know I get long winded when I do them these ways. So, neuroscience has mapped personality, memory, morality, and emotion to brain processes, all of them. Personality, memory, morality, and emotion to brain processes. When parts of the brain are damaged, traits once attributed to the soul, empathy, faith, memory, can vanish. Gone. I'm sure you've heard of these cases. This doesn't mean that humanity lacks depth. It means consciousness emerges from biology, not a detachable ghost. I think that was one of my frustrations after deconverting, is realizing that I had surrounded myself by people who were pretending to know things that they haven't even tried to know. Therefore, I was living in a world where several decades of human advancement of understanding had not happened. Not even several decades. Let's be honest with it. Several centuries. You end up living as if several centuries of human advancement has not happened in service to a fairy tale that you've attached to. And I call it a fairy tale because if you only believe it because you heard it or saw it in a dream, then you know it's a fairy tale. If you have not tested it, then you have not tried to treat it as anything other than a fairy tale. You're just inviting me to be as lazy as you, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to come to that slumber party. No, thank you. All right. Because for many of them, it has an attachment to their sense of purpose. And I'm like, that's so beautiful, but it is so stupid to have something. I'm sorry, I just got to say it like it is, to have your purpose attached to something that you cannot define. To have your purpose attached to something that you can't actually hear anything from, get anything from. This is outsourcing your identity to foolishness. This is why we are having the identity crisis and the meaning crisis that we're having right now, because so many humans are content with outsourcing their meaning, outsourcing their identity. No, some ancient alien had to send me here for a purpose. Or no, there's some spiritual guides somewhere who are from the future and they come from the past and they get us right. No, why do you need all of that? Why do you need somebody else to look with your eyes? Why do you need someone else to hear with your ears? Why do you need somebody else to walk with your feet? Why can't you just live your existence? Why can't you wake up every day and find something to do? I'm sorry. No, so I don't need somebody else who has a pre plan for me. I don't need somebody else who has a prejudgment for me. The idea of a soul adds the added point of someone else has a plan for you that you have to follow. And if you do not follow that plan, you're going to be punished. And if you do follow that plan, you're going to be blessed with a party that wasn't even made for you. Like, these be sideways blessings in the Bible. Yay, you get to come to my party forever and ever and ever and listen to my favorite song over and over and over again. No, heaven sounds horrible. Heaven sounds like that one rich kid that just moved in a poor neighborhood and nobody liked his ass. So now he done had his family fire everybody or force everybody parents to make their kids come to his little birthday party. That's what heaven sound like. Heaven sound like being at the rich kid birthday party who ain't even gonna let you play with his stuff. You know what I'm saying? You dare to watch him play everything. You know what I'm saying? He not gonna let you play Batman. He not gonna let you play Batman. Okay. I'm sorry. I am tripping today. I'm going way too hard. I gotta wrap this up. Okay. So once we kind of break ourselves away from that idea, and mind you, I'm a point of reference, not a source of truth for anybody. You believe whatever the fuck you want to believe. But as we separate ourselves from the idea of being an eternal soul or even just the weight of it, like for me, I feel like I am currently living in the closest thing to eternity that there could ever be. It would be like a really bad thing if you got to the end of your life and thought that you was about to go to eternity, and then right when you was dying, Somebody just popped up in your mind and said, "Thank you. I hope you enjoyed eternity. You will now sleep forever." And you're like, "What?" Yeah, you just missed eternity. You were there the whole time and you decided to waste your life. You know, that's just a little thing in my head. But one of the more immediate things that happens is when eternity is removed, urgency increases. Y'all see, I work like a madman. That's why people can't get my attention because I work like a madman. I got work to do, man. I'm sorry, I can't come down and play with the kiddies. I don't do that. I don't like playing with younger children, so I damn sure ain't about to be playing with grown children. You feel me? All right, back to regularly scheduled programming. So there's this urgency that kind of comes in. Purpose shifts from preparing for another world to shaping this one. And then that becomes another part of my eternity is what I get to leave behind in this world, what I get to contribute to this world. Mortality gives each moment value precisely because it ends. But even beyond that, man, the more we have wrestled with our mortality, the more we have been clear of ourselves with our mortality, the more we've done with our morality, you know, and the more we've extended our mortality. Hello, I ain't mad at it. I like to live a little longer. I got a few bad habits that probably won't help me get there. All right. So, secular ethics obviously grounds morality in reciprocity, empathy, and shared flourishing. Evolutionary psychology shows cooperation and fairness as adaptive behaviors. Doing good becomes an act of coherence instead of obedience, which aligns with what sustains life, not appeasement. So I'm doing good because this helps life, not because someone's going to say I was a good star seed in another life. I'm doing this because this helps people right now. I'm doing this because this helps the environment right now. I'm doing this because this makes us better right now. I'm not saying I don't care about tomorrow. I'm not saying I don't care about what could be, but damn it, can we please get good at what is first? Let's stop leapfrogging, because I'm telling you, what's happening is, and maybe this don't break your heart like it breaks mine, but I am watching people throw their lives away believing bullshit. I don't know if you realize you're going to become a victim of your own life. You will just be a victim because you've already outsourced your role in life. You've already made yourself just a puzzle piece in somebody else's game. That's not a winning position to be in life. I'm sorry to be coaching y'all. Y'all didn't ask for that. And the thing is, we can find meaning without dogma. Meaning becomes participatory rather than prescribed. And again, like, if you believe in a soul because you found it, that's beautiful. But if you believe in a soul just because that was the word that was handed down to you, then you don't believe in a soul. You just believe in a fairy tale. You have an inheritance, one that you haven't got an understanding for yet. So instead of waiting for divine affirmation, we generate significance through our interactions and the legacies we build. Um, you know, So initially, when you lose this idea of, if I don't have a soul, what am I? You're you. You know, and watch, we're gonna do it again. We're gonna show you how you're leapfrogging. If I don't have a soul, what am I? You're you. Well, I don't know what I am. Then how do you know what the fuck a soul is? Maybe figure out what you are first. Just to start there. Like, stop adding extra components. You know, that's the thing. Like, it's the whole soul, spirit, mind, life, energy. It is all the mystery of you. And so instead of just adding more mysterious phrases to it, just own it and say, I don't know what it is, but it's me. Me is the only, like, I don't think we've earned the right to move beyond me yet. I don't think we've done the work to move beyond me yet. We don't know these distinctions. We're just adding different words that just mean me. My soul means my me. My spirit means my me. My energy means my me. It's all me. So just adding different words don't make those words different things. It's still you, and you are still the mystery. You are still the thing that you don't understand. Just someone giving you different words to call things that you don't understand doesn't actually give you understanding. That's why you're lost, beloved. Okay. This is why I encourage empowerment through knowledge. Recognizing the soul as a historical construct exposes how power systems manipulate metaphors. Once you see that, you can reclaim authority of your own identity. The soul becomes a metaphor for the richness of consciousness, not a leash on it, not a measurement of it. It's a beautiful metaphor. That's why I put it up here. Soul food. Loving you is like food to my soul. Yes, indeed. You had to watch the movie to know the soundtrack. But anyway, it's a beautiful metaphor, but there are no mechanics behind it. And anybody trying to sell you on mechanics behind it is scamming you. And quite honestly, you deserve to be scammed. Okay? Okay? Like, there is no excuse anymore for not getting an understanding. All right. And I say this because I've tried to talk so many people out of getting scammed and watch them get scammed and then want me to feel bad about them getting scammed. And I'm like, no, you really, really wanted that scam. That's what you wanted. What you wanted was life not to work the way life actually works. You wanted a magical outcome. You wanted an exceptional outcome. You have been so steeped in superstition that you do not realize when you are dripping in it. Damn it, I'm doing too much today. Okay, let's go. Let's go. The Christian soul was never just a spiritual claim, okay? It was always a socio-technical invention, a software of control coded in myth and maintained through fear. Deconstructing it doesn't diminish humanity, it restores it. We've been living under the fear of things like, what good is it to save your life if you lose your soul? Do you not hear the scam in that? Please hear the scam. So, running through the roots of this word, the theological roots, it's coming from nephesh, Hebrew, psych, Greek, and then there's a little bit of the Latin anima, which is that which animates. That becomes the root of the word animal, living thing. We're all animals. Ain't that funny? We all animals, but I'm not gonna go there. That's the etymology of how we get to the word soul. And so when we think about soul, we think about that thing that animates. But then because this exists in the same pseudo garbage bag as the word spirit kind of comes from this Hebrew ruach, this Greek pneuma, and then this Latin spiritus, which means breath or blowing air. So spirit was originally a force, not an entity. It was the dynamic aspect of life, not a personal self. Ultimately, this thing that we shared in common. Which in many ways, I am working on a course called Secular Spirituality that I'll be rolling out maybe next year, where I'll talk about how we actually already have secular understandings of spiritual things, and I'll walk through it. I'm not going to do it in this video, but it's going to be good. So spirit was originally a force, not an identity. The original sense of soul meant life itself, the animation of matter, not a detachable ghost that floats off after death. And then the word mind kind of comes to this evolution of Greek nous, which means intellect, reasoning, and understanding, and Latin mens, thinking faculty, consciousness. The mind concept developed primarily in philosophy and psychology, not theology, and it's tied to awareness, thought, and cognition, what we now associate with brain activity. All right. So, just to break that down, soul, we can think of the life, the self, or the breath. This is what the early humans who were wrestling with these concepts were defining them as. The Christian adaptation of that was this is the immortal essence of who you are that is judged after death. That was their little contribution there. But the modern understanding is really just the identity, emotion, or depth. Okay. So when someone ultimately talks about their soul, they're really just talking about their moral identity. I don't care about using the word, but we don't need to add the supernatural implications. This is my moral identity. I haven't gone past that yet. I don't know anything beyond that. Why would I make that leap? You're not going to make me jump. No, you're not. Then you got spirit, which meant breath, energy, or vitality. Divine influence or God's indwelling presence is how the Christians reframe that. But our modern understanding is we look at that as attitude or just energy or just drive. So again, team spirit, we got spirit week, I'm in good spirits. You know what I'm saying? I like spirits. I like to drink spirits. Then you have mind, intellect, thought, reason, the reasoning part of the soul. Now, am I saying that there can't be anything beyond that? If you notice, I haven't said that at any moment in this conversation, but what I have said is to pretend like you know that there's something beyond that is disingenuous. To attach your certainty to it is disingenuous because certainty should not precede comprehension. How are you certain, but you don't even understand it? So that makes no sense to me. What? Mm-mm. Nope. No, it's possible that you guessed and got the answer right, but you won't know that you got the answer right until you learn how to do the work. So I will wait on the work. And so, just to kind of end this and put the pin in the point here, let's look at this from a secular or scientific standpoint. Mind is function, spirit is feeling, soul is story. Mind is the collection of mental processes, our thought, our memory, our emotional awareness. Spirit is feeling the quality or the vitality of life, often poetic rather than literal, right? And then soul is story, the symbolic language we use to describe meaning, identity, and moral essence. When I think of spirit, I think of an emergent property that happens when people do things together, you know? When I think of soul, I think of our moral identity, how we see ourselves and how we weigh ourselves against the world that we live in. In neuroscience, the mind emerges from the brain's activity. The spirit is an emotional or social phenomenon, the sense of connectedness or passion, and the soul is metaphorical, the narrative of who we are, constructed through memory and meaning. It is dishonest, and many people, even in the secular community, promote this idea, but it is dishonest to say that science and religion are answering different questions. That nothing could be further from the truth. Science is just the only one asking honest questions. You know? We sometimes say science asks how, religion asks why. Why is not an honest question until you know how. Why is a dishonest question? Because you're assuming a who or a cause. And the reason I want to highlight this, because then we're going to assume when we allow people to say, well, science doesn't answer those questions. What? Science doesn't wrestle with morality? Science doesn't wrestle with purpose? Science doesn't wrestle with mind, spirit, and soul? Who told you that? How many scientists do you know? Which scientist told you that? And that's when the whole thing starts falling apart because then you realize, like, oh no, damn, scientists didn't tell me that. I just heard some atheist say that or some Christian say that, and I just bought into it because everything has become debate culture. And so if you hear it at a debate, it must be true. Okay, I think, man, I've went over time. I'm sure. So let's end it right here. Let's because I don't do the semantic pedantic wars, right? So I'm not saying people shouldn't use the word soul. As a matter of fact, the reason this conversation comes up is because someone noticed that I used the word soul when I talked about my team. I said, man, this meeting was nourishment to my soul. And someone got upset and they were like, oh, you're not an atheist. You said soul. And I'm like, bruh, you're a stranger. That's how I treat that. If you're a stranger, like, why do I care about what you think? Somebody was telling me the other week, they was like, well, I'm just disappointed in you. Hey, me and you don't have any appointments, so your disappointment can't live here. That's your disappointment, all right? You keep that over there to yourself. But if we break all of this down, and I'm up out of here, y'all. If we break this down, if we strip away the mythology, I don't have a problem with the words. If we strip away the mythology, let's get some understanding. And so soul equals my identity and my continuity. Who am I across time? Right? Spirit is my energy and my motivation, what moves me. And mind is my cognition and my awareness. How do I think and perceive? Christianity blurred these three intentionally. By making soul eternal, it extended the church's jurisdiction beyond life. By calling spirit divine, it positioned obedience as the condition for vitality. And by subordinating mind to faith, it ensured reason remained captive to revelation. And so I hope you've gotten something out of today's conversation. I know I was a little all over the place today, but this got good to me. And so I hope you got something good out of it. Listen, we have a lot of exciting things coming up with Bridge City. So if you have not joined us online yet, what are you waiting for? Get in there. We're doing a Thanksgiving drive all November long. We have a Thanksgiving Pictionary game night coming up. And then in December, we're having movie night together. We have open house coming up. So keep a lookout on this channel. You're going to be seeing a lot of great things from our team and our members. And as always, thank you all for watching today. And until next time, keep rising.